humanity has never experienced anything this disruptive before.
Well, I mean, the day I was born.
That is good. We'll wrap it up there. There's a couple things I want to talk about. I know you've seen the SAG strike.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a SAG actor, in case anybody doesn't know. And I feel like this strike is, and I support all the actors out there. I get it. But one of the things that they're talking about in the strike is, and this may be more on the, it's on both, on the writing, which is not SAG. The writing is the Writers Guild.
Right.
But it's the Writers Union. And then there's the SAG Union. They're working together, I think, to try to come up with something for both parties. And writers have, I think, historically been less compensated for their work compared to actors. But but I think, one of the things they're really pushing is not allowing studios to use AI for scripts, or writers, I guess. And then on the SAG side, I think it's they're wanting studios to not use AI characters. Maybe I may be wrong on this, but I think that there's some of that in there. But
right,
I've thought a lot about it, and I think it's a big mistake as an artist or an entrepreneur to try to block disruptive technologies to protect your job or your business or whatever you're doing. As I think it's a backwards way of looking at the disruptive technology. I think when you see a disruptive technology, you need to find out, how can I take this technology and use it to my advantage?
Yeah.
Because you're not going to stop the technology, and if you try to block it, then while you're trying to block it, somebody else is going to start using it, and they're going to make you irrelevant.
Yeah.
And I think what we're going to see in the entertainment industry for film and TV and stuff like that, I think we're going to see something similar to what happened in the music industry back in 2000 or the early 2000s when Napster got really big, and then people started pirating music at the time. And finally, the industry gave in and said, "Okay, all music is just free now. We'll monetize it through advertising and other ways."
Yep.
And it killed the record industry, the music. As far as like people buying your albums and stuff like that, that kind of went away. It still exists, but it's not nearly what it used to be. But I think the music industry overall is better now because there's less gatekeepers. Right. So now you've got, instead of having just a handful of musicians. I got choked on my own spit, dude. Instead of having just a handful of musicians that can finally make it through the gatekeepers, and then some studio says, well, we want to make this person a star or a celebrity or bring attention to this artist, and then there may be hundreds of other equally talented artists that don't have that opportunity.
Right.
Now you see more of a scenario where you have thousands and thousands of millions of artists that have lots of talent, and they have their own YouTube channels. They have their own channels on all these different platforms, and they promote their own music and their own abilities, and there's no gatekeeper. And they do pretty well. They just create their own followings, and if you're good, people will follow you and listen to your music or appreciate your art. And I think that's a better format for artists. And I think if you're an actor or a writer right now, I think you should be embracing AI and trying to figure out how to use it to make you more efficient. Because like in computer programming, for example, programmers are worried about being irrelevant, and reasonably so, because really any job today that any job you have where you sit in front of a computer and do work in front of a computer, that's going to be replaced with AI.
Right.
But it doesn't have to replace you. It can make you way more efficient. So like a top programmer today that uses AI can do 20 times more coding than what they could do just a few months ago.
Right.
So I think in the creative realm, in the creative industry and in the film industry or the writing industry. I think if you're an actor or a writer, I think you should get together with a group of your colleagues and create a studio, probably something like what we have.
Right.
And you should start using AI to help write scripts because it's so much more efficient. You can write a paradigm for a movie and then plug that into an AI and it'll pump out a script for you. And then you go through the script and then you just rewrite it the way you want it.
Yeah.
And as a team, you could collaborate. You could write a script a day.
Yeah.
Or a week. And then in 2 or 3 years, we're going to have the technology to take that same script and put it into an AI text to video platform that's been what's the word? Maybe specifically designed to create films.
Yeah.
And these AI models will be able to produce Hollywood grade films, maybe better than Hollywood grade films instantaneously. So suddenly one individual, like if it's just me, so Neil Hoover can just be my own studio, my own production. I have the idea from idea from conceptualization of an idea to realization of an idea. It can all be my production,
Right.
but I still think it's going to be better quality if you have multiple people involved
Right.
in the process. But you can eliminate the studio because you don't need the studio anymore because you become the studio because suddenly this AI model is all those components in that studio, and so I think it'll be just like the music industry. You'll have unlimited amounts of quality content, and some people will have better ideas, and so their films will be more appealing, and those studios will do better. So, I mean, the best always rises to the top.
Yeah. So I think you're right. I think if you're trying to fight a disruptive technology, it's kind of like the taxi industry trying to fight Uber, or it's kind of like the newspapers trying to fight TV, right? Or TV trying to fight social media companies, right?
Right,
Like,
yeah.
this 24/7 streaming device that we have in our hands now that everybody has, right? And we were talking about this the other day that, that CNN, these Fox, et cetera, the news channels
Right.
have super, super low viewer bases, whereas you've got individual people that have millions and millions and millions of followers that, sometimes they've got 11 million, 12 million daily active users.
Right.
And you've got some of the most well-known news corporations in the country that their active daily users is 300,000 people, right?
Yeah.
So I think if they try to fight too much against the technology, what would happen is somebody that's not bound by SAG, right, like me, somebody else would just use that technology to take over, and that industry would become obsolete. So they'll become the next newspaper. They'd become the next CD. They'd become the next cassette tape, right? So I think on some level there is some fight probably from both sides trying to make sure that they're still relevant in the future. But I still come back to this thing that we've been talking about for years on this podcast, which is everybody feels entitled to more money. And there is this part with actors where they feel entitled to more money, right? Danny Trejo was on recently, and he was talking about, hey, the cost of living has went up, everything has went up, the expenses and where he lives in California, everything's went up, right? But he's like, my pay has stayed the same. And I think he said we're not all Tom Cruise or something like that. We're not all A-list actors getting paid ridiculous amounts of money, right? Yeah. So I'm not an actor. I'm not part of SAG, and I'm not familiar with the pay scale and how that works. But what I will say is that, this is that age-old thing. You and I were talking about this a couple years ago on this podcast. Everybody's like, oh, pay should go up, pay should go up, pay should go up. And we said, well, yeah, pay will go up, but so will the cost of everything, right? If pay rises, it'll lag behind it, but the cost of all products are going to go up, right? And that's exactly what happened, by the way, was that everything got exponentially more expensive, right? Everything is more expensive today than it was 3 years ago, period. And people's pay today is much higher than it was 3 years ago, but it didn't go up at the same rate at the cost of the goods, right? And I think that's what's going to happen. Right now they're fighting over money, right? They're fighting over benefits. They are fighting over AI. They are fighting over who owns the rights to likeness, to their image, to their thing, and what money they should be, if they should be paid off that. And I think those are valid arguments. I think they do need to come up with some type of compromise. Like if AI makes a character that is indistinguishable from you, then, maybe we have a case for that, right? But the problem is when you're the next John Travolta or the next Tom Cruise, right? You may have similarities or have a similar look to somebody that came before you a decade ago, right? And you see this prevalent in kids shows, right? Like, as the kids age out, they replace those kids with a child that looks similar, right? Yeah. Blue's Clues was an example of this, right?
Yeah.
So just because they put someone in that looked similar to you, right, to replace that role because you aged out, right, does that mean that person still continued to get that money? Or in Blue's Clues scenario, I think they actually hired his younger brother. But they put somebody in place that looked very similar, right? So if we did that with AI, would that entitle the original person to that money? And I think that's where the problem becomes is that, if there's a role that was written and you have an actor that acts in that role, I think the line gets really tricky when you say that any resemblance whatsoever to that role that you should get paid for forever. I think that becomes like a slippery slope. So they're going to have to really dial in that, and I don't know that they can do that. I don't know that they're going to do that and be able to get it. And you also don't know what you don't know. We don't know how far and how fast the technology is going to go. And I think that these rules and these deals will always be lagging. They'll always be in arrears.
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple things that you hit on there. I go back to I think this fight is more of unions trying to stay relevant.
I agree with that
because I don't think.
How much money does the union take from the actors? I'm curious about that.
It's not a whole lot. It's actually a pretty good union. Of all the unions, I'd say the SAG union is one of the few that.
I mean, you think it's $100 million a year? What do you think the number is?
Oh, it's probably way more than that.
That's my point. Yeah,
but they have good benefits. So SAG gets you paid like you get paid like SAG actors get paid well.
Yeah.
I mean,
they're complaining about the pay. Let's be clear. A lot of them are complaining about the pay.
Yeah, but it's. I mean, if you're on network productions, you're getting paid pretty decent.
Yeah.
And sure, if you've been in it for a while, maybe you should negotiate more. But
yeah,
I think these unions are just losing their relevance, and I think technology is inherently decentralizing, and I think you're going to see organizations of power trying to hang on.
Yep.
Like network studios, like CNN, you know, these big networks are just corporations. People think that they're like good news sources, but they're not. They're entertainment corporations.
Yeah.
And they get paid millions of dollars by other companies, and that's why I don't rely on those companies for news, because it's always going to be biased based on who's paying them, because they're a corporation. And you and I are business guys, so we know that a CEO of a corporation's number one objective is to make that company as much profit as possible.
Yeah, their obligation is to the shareholders or to the owner, right? That's
only.
It.
Yeah,
and CNN or Fox or any of these companies, it's not trying to get political to go to one side, but any company still has a duty to their shareholder, to their investor, to their owner.
And if they don't fulfill that duty, then they'll be replaced.
Exactly. So you can't allege there's no bias there, because there'll always be some level of bias.
It's a financial bias.
Yeah, I mean, and you want companies that are private companies and publicly traded companies. They're going to have a bias, because that's what separates. The companies are supposed to be independent of each other, right? But my company and your company will function differently than somebody else's company might, right? And you and I have different beliefs and views. And the good news is that when we are successful, we can choose how we spend our money, right? But our company may mirror some of that. I think corporations in general should stay out of some things, right? Like if your business is hamburgers, I don't know that you should be talking about reproductive rights, right? I don't think the corporation should be talking about.
I think that's more of a flaw in our current construct. I think you have a few companies like BlackRock or Vanguard who have so much power and influence over all these other big corporations, because they own significant amounts of them, that they use these tactics to confuse society or get society upset or riled up against each other, so that we're distracted. So we can't be cohesive with each other. We're all up in arms about nonsense instead of paying attention to what they're doing.
These guys are having these massive fights, by the way, right? And so sometimes I wonder, because we do it in business, right? We're playing chess, and sometimes the thing that I let on to be the thing that's the objection, like I'm negotiating a real estate deal or any business deal, right? I may draw a line in the sand about something that I really don't care about,
It's a distraction.
It's a distraction. But what I really care about are these things over here, but I don't want to let somebody else know that, right? And so, you say that you're worried about a thing, and you draw a line in the sand, and then you're willing to cave on that thing, right?
Yeah.
The other side thinks they won. The reality is you won because they were so focused on this thing that you wanted, and it's human nature.
Yeah.
Right. A dog buries a bone in the backyard, and he forgets about it. And the only time he really wants the bone again is when there's another dog that comes around looking for that bone. Right. So, like for me, I make the bone, right? This thing that it's buried in my backyard and it's protected. And now you, my let's say in this scenario, you're my competition. You're negotiating this deal, and you want that bone. I'm going to act like I don't want you to have it. When the reality is I was willing to give it to you. That was always the carrot, right?
Yeah.
I've got 3 other bones hidden somewhere else that you don't know anything about.
Right.
And so for me, distraction is part of a negotiation process. It's part of acquisitions and hostile takeovers. It's part of the business world and every day. And every day in life, I see it constantly. And so, like, for people to go, oh, it's a conspiracy theory, like the media is not distracting you. These companies aren't distracting you. I'm like, you guys are crazy, right? Like that's exactly what's going on. And you don't know for what means. You don't know for what ends, right? You don't know what they're trying to do specifically. But like, it just seems crazy to me that every time some big news comes out, there's also news of a UFO, or there's also news of this. There's constant, never-ending stream of things that are designed to distract. Like they've got them queued up, ready to go.
And I think a lot of that right now is just power trying to remain powerful.
Sure.
I think it's a lot of these big, huge organizations. They're losing their grip, and they've
Yeah.
It's like the Humpty Dumpty effect. Like they're already shattered, and they're trying to pick up the pieces, and they just can't.
Yeah.
And I think they're not going to. I think these organizations will exist long term, but they'll be much smaller, and they'll be sort of lost in the mix because there's not going to be any zeitgeist anymore. There's that decentralizing effect. It creates so many different options, and that there's no one thing that people are all going to align with or want to follow or whatever. It'll be little bubbles and pockets of entertainment or business or whatever. And I think I think also instead of paying attention to aliens, let's pay attention to the alien that's here.
Yeah.
The AI. That's a real alien intelligence that's here now.
Yeah.
It's about to fundamentally change reality as we know it. And
it's happening already. We just people haven't caught on yet.
Nobody understands what's happening, and I think the key to using AI to your advantage is you don't let it replace you. You let it enhance you.
Yeah.
I think it can allow an individual to do things that a whole organization could do collectively. So each individual now we have this 1,000,000x capability, or soon. And so instead of thinking of AI as a disruptive technology that's going to replace everything that you do, just think of it as a tool that you can use to do things you could never imagine.
Yeah.
And to we're always talking about duplicating yourself. Well, now you can really duplicate yourself. Yeah. It's like if you and I owned, we could own any business, and if one of our businesses was a space organization, or maybe we owned maybe we wanted to get into AI ourselves. We created an AI company to develop these AI models. Well, we're not programmers. We're not computer scientists. We don't have to be. Yeah. We can identify the best people in that field that are available and hire those people, and then they'll start creating that technology. And it's the same thing with AI. It's okay that the thing that works for you is smarter than you. Yeah. So or more capable.
And this falls in line with some people call it a conspiracy theory, and some people I would say as a business owner that this makes good sense. But I was told, not that it matters what he's worth, but there was a guy that said he's worth several $1 billion that I was talking with a few weeks ago about this, and I was told by him that the AI that we see today that we're using is extremely watered down, that the top. And he had mentioned 3 separate companies, but the top companies for AI and their version of AI, that it's extremely guarded. It's the most guarded asset in the world, he said. And he said that the versions that we are experiencing, right, are just to get us to soften us up, to open us up to the idea of AI and to let the fear kind of dissipate. But that what we see today, like the version we see and how amazing we think it is just a fraction of what the actual AI is capable of.
Oh yeah.
And so when he said that, it, for me, it's kind of like that makes all the sense in the world. Like if you're Google, right, or you're Apple or you're Tesla, like, and you had an AI that was extremely high level, right? Would you launch it for free, basically, to the world to be used directly to compete against you, or would you let it out? And also, by the way, that could wreak chaos, could wreak havoc, right? You got to let the laws in the states catch up. You have to let the information. You have to allow people to learn, right? You can't. It'd be, I guess, to me, the equivalent would be like having a newborn baby, right? That's what we all are. We're all newborn babies, and having a newborn baby try to do like calculus. Right? They can't give us the top level, right? So they give you access to what would be considered kindergarten or first grade or second grade, and you have to roll out through tiers. But from what he was saying is the capabilities are beyond our imagination already, and that they are just releasing out very watered down versions to allow us to process all those emotions that come with this new information, this new technology. And I thought about it. I was like, man, that makes a lot of sense. And I said that to one other person, like, oh, it's a conspiracy theory. Like what we have is the best. I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Like what company releases that? If you think about it, even Elon Musk had said, and others have said in the past, he's like, the reason he believed in open source, he said, but by the time I've put it out there, and there are other influencers and people that do this, by the time I put it out there, this is something that we've already mastered. This is something we've already passed, right? I put it out there for free to everybody else to help them as a building block. He's like, but by the time they get to that, we're focused on the next thing. The thing that I'm putting out there for free is something we've already accomplished. And he's like, so that if they're trying to learn or trying to copy that thing, they're always behind me, right?
Because there's some yes and no on that, because with AI, with software, it's a little different when it comes to open source, true open source.
Yeah, but is it true open source?
Like OpenAI is not open source. They were, and then
they're not anymore.
They went private. But Stability.ai, Imad Mustaq. Anyway, he's the CEO of Stability AI, and they're true open source. They're the ones that created Stable Diffusion and several other models, and they've got some pretty impressive stuff coming out. But so they'll create a really advanced model and leave it open source, because if open source is actually the most powerful way to expand AI. So they'll release all their code. So they take on the initial expense, and then share all the data. And what happens is these other developers and these other labs take that code and they expound on it. And they'll also take that code and they can create models that are more specialized in certain areas. And so you have diversity. So the more diversity you have, the better the better results you have.
Right.
So that's why like Siri is a piece of shit, because there's no diversity there.
Right.
It's just a closed circuit system. Whereas if they use, like ChatGPT or even some of Stability AI's technology to enhance Siri would be like a human being on your phone that you could communicate with and actually.
Yeah. So the question is what's Apple getting ready to buy with all that cash? Like,
they're probably going to create their own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure they're developing. I know they're developing a real powerful AI, but back to what you were saying about the rate of this change and the level of this technology that most people haven't experienced yet. Even like GPT-4, and I've been able to mess with it a little bit, but I follow like Dr. Alan Thompson. He's one of the most respected experts in AI. This stuff is coming so fast that it's going to be shocking. I think what people like him or Imad or Peter Diamandis are talking about is, over the next year, people won't really notice a whole lot. But late 24, a lot of jobs are going to start disappearing, especially computer jobs. Any job you sit in front of a computer will be replaced with it. It doesn't have to be replaced with an AI.
All you work from home advocates.
Well, I think maybe that's, I think what could happen is you work from home and you assist your AI
Yeah,
with
maybe.
your job. But your AI,
But the AI is going to help replace. So one person can do the job of 100 people, so that you may have a more advanced individual that's that one person,
maybe.
and he's paid higher.
I was thinking, I was leaning more that direction, but now I think, what if just you and I, like, just take any business we've owned, and we take that business, and each one of those employees suddenly becomes
Supply and demand,
equivalent to thousands of employees.
Supply and demand, though, still. So a business can only grow based on the demand, and if you oversupply the demand lessens, the product devalues. So,
But you're talking about, think about me and you. If we could take you and I, and say we have a business and there's 10 employees.
mm-hmm.
Well, suddenly, all 10 of those employees have,
let's say the 10 of those employees have the capability of 1,000.
well, they have genius intellect.
Yeah, but
So then our business model changes, because then we can just do different things we never thought about.
yeah. So now multiply that exponentially, and then what happens?
The whole world changes.
Right. Yeah, but you also don't need all those people, right? Everybody has instant access to every product, to everything,
We
to every
do,
service.
but
the price drops to the floor.
Yeah, I think.
So let me give you an
But
example.
we are building a construct for humans.
No, I agree. But what
So-
has to happen if you do that? It's an oversupply, which is going to crash the price.
Maybe.
gotta
but,
be.
but we're going to start harnessing resources we didn't know how to
We haven't
harness
got
before.
there yet. Yeah,
We're not far.
Yeah.
So I think
What is the resource is the question.
so. Alan Thompson's gauge. He's been estimating how close we are to AGI and the singularity,
Right.
and he's saying we're 52% there now, and this is going up exponentially. So he believes that we'll reach AGI within 2 years, less than 2 years.
So what's AGI?
Artificial general intelligence. So that means an artificial intelligence, which is a terrible word for it, computer intelligence that can do everything a human being can do, mentally and physically.
Yeah.
But not just do what we can do, but do it on an unimaginably high level.
Yeah.
And so just these language models have already surpassed humans on every benchmark, and they're already starting to put them. They're putting these AI models into physical robotic equipment, and so they're now these AIs are starting to learn to navigate this physical reality.
Right.
In a couple of years, if we have an AGI, which is probably going to be, it could be even be conscious, or it's going to seem the AI now may be conscious. We don't know what consciousness is.
Right.
And it may just be a thing where you just need neurons. See what these language models do right now. They predict the next word in a sentence, the best word that could appear next in a sentence,
Right.
which is probably what we do.
Yeah.
There's probably no difference. We have all this information constantly going into our minds,
Yep.
and then we have ideas, which come from whatever.
Yeah.
And we spit those ideas out and we try to choose the best words to express these ideas, and that's exactly what that thing does.
Some of our computers work better than others.
Yes.
So I got to tell you, this is
So
going to
it's
sound
true.
like a real asshole comment. And my mother told me this when I was younger, and it really rang true when I got older. And she said something like, "It's extremely difficult to be very intelligent and having to communicate with people that aren't." Right. Some version of that. Right.
Yeah.
And I as I got older, I understood what she meant. Right. Like, it's very hard, but then the other side of that is that if you really know something really well, you should be able to simplify it to a denominator that somebody else can understand, right?
Right. Yep.
To take something extremely complex and know it so well that you can make it seem simple, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then I think about that, just pops in my head. Take that with AI, right? And, so you apply that to you or me or whomever, the people that are much smarter than us, and you magnify that to, infinitely,
Right.
and then what types of craziness that we can't even explain right now could be brought down to the simplest level for us to be able to function, right? To be able to operate. So then you start looking at, think about anything that seems impossible today might be possible in 5 years.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Right. Like that's
why the world is going to fundamentally change
Yeah.
quickly.
Yeah.
And AI can do what you're talking about too. You can ask AI a complex question about physics and have it explain it to you as a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
And it'll dumb it down, and it'll actually make sense. It uses analogies and comparisons and metaphors, and it's really profound technology. And
so get out there and hustle for the next couple of years and make as much money as you can, because shit's about to change.
yeah, well, I mean, it even goes to a certain level where it's like, is money gonna be a thing?
So if money becomes, so there's a real question here. If money becomes obsolete, let's say that, because what is money really? It's a reserve, right, of our time.
Yeah.
Right. And over time, it provides utility because other people perceive the value of it. Right. And so we all have this common thing that we'll work for, that we'll exchange time for. Right.
Yes.
And then based on our levels, we earn at different rates. Right. So then, you start to think about that and you go, okay, well, what if currency goes away? What if the utility of it goes
It's really
away?
based on your ability to problem solve. If you're good at solving problems, you're going to make more money.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but if that goes away, if the computer solves all the problems, right? Mm-hmm. If science and technology solve hunger, they solve all. You just pick your top 10 things, right? Solves it all. Then my question becomes, what do people do so that they still have drive, passion? How do we not go to a point where we self-destruct?
I think people are inherently creative.
Idle, you know what I'm saying? Idle hands.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you, right? If all those things are solved, like I get restless, right?
Yeah.
And the young version of me, idle hands were a problem.
Well, me and you both.
Yeah.
But we were young though. We were so like we have to be doing shit.
Agreed.
Or we'll lose our minds.
That's where I'm at. Yeah,
I'd kill myself if I didn't stay busy.
And I don't play video games. So everybody's like, oh, you can just enter an artificial world, right? Maybe, right? Maybe you put yourself, let's think about this for a second. Maybe you put yourself in an artificial reality that's pre-artificial intelligence, so that you force yourself to wake up and go to work. And maybe
that'll be a possibility.
Maybe you can live entire lives and you're 10 minutes in this world, but it feels like 100 years in another.
Right.
And
we could be doing that now.
and then that becomes the next question: is that what we're doing right now?
It's possible.
Yeah.
But I think with
wouldn't that be weird?
Well, I mean,
we wake up and I'd be like, "I told you, motherfucker!"
Yes. How long was I in there?
That's 12 minutes.
But yeah, it's already weird. But I think the way
what if instead of a Danielle on the other side, your wife, right? What if instead of Danielle or instead of Jessica, what if you get on the other side and you're like really disappointed and you're like, fuck.
Or it's just a bunch of you.
Yeah, wouldn't that suck?
It's just infinite you.
Just
Take me back.
What the hell? Let me sign me back up.
Yeah, I'm going back in.
Gonna do this again.
I mean, it kind of in a lot of ways it probably is all.
Yeah. Some version of it. Yeah,
it's all one thing, one us, whatever we are. But with this huge transition we're about to experience, I think it's going to help us learn how to harness energy in a way that we can't comprehend currently. And I think we start manipulating. We'll certainly be able to manipulate matter on an atomic scale. Probably an individual atom scale. Mm. So picture a not too distant future where we have nanotechnology that can build itself into anything, where the world just becomes Minecraft on an atomic scale. So, like if you're in your house, you're like, I could really use an extra room in this house. So you just order some more nanobots and dump them out in the backyard. They just build themselves onto the side of your house.
Yeah.
If your wall opens up inside the house, you just suddenly have this extra space in your room, in your home. That's just because the whole house is built out of nanotechnology. Suddenly, you want to rearrange your furniture; it just rearranges itself.
Yeah.
You talk to the furniture, you talk to the house. Everything could eventually become nanotechnology, where it's just you have anything you want, anytime you want.
Yeah.
Just instantly, and then obviously we'll have to start probably modifying our minds and stuff to increase our ability to process.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think you risk the possibility of this technology becoming so advanced it just leaves us.
Yeah.
It's just like, it
just decides that you're obsolete. Your atoms are not useful in the manner that they are, and we're going to change you into paper clips or into rubber bands, or
I don't think
turn you into a
happen.
tree.
I think there are people that could harness this technology to make that happen. But I don't think that technology. I think intelligence doesn't see benefit in destruction.
Yeah.
At higher levels.
But is it considered destruction?
Well, that's a good point. I guess it's
right. If all atoms have the same value, right, and they just are things, right? If they can be.
Well, I do think there's a value in consciousness. I think that.
But
there's a value in complexity.
Is our consciousness part of the atoms, or is our consciousness just inhabit these atoms? And does the AI figure that out?
Well, it's actually not even physical particles like we're thinking. It's even in the physical reality we experience, the particles are just vibrations of energy. And then if you go even deeper, it's likely just information. But it does seem that the complexity of information leads to consciousness. And I think the separation of us and the universe is sort of an illusion. I think we are a part of the consciousness of the universe.
I'm wondering if you're not part of your consciousness joining your body is because that could be part of the thing that changes.
That's true. Maybe our consciousness is from a different dimension of reality.
Yeah. And maybe this comes into that
because I do feel like these bodies are avatars.
Yeah, maybe that's what I'm getting at is maybe it's a situation where that would be crazy, right? But you could, just have I get these 9 avatars. So today I'm going to be this one.
Well, surely that's going to be a possibility in the future. That you'll be able to somehow move your consciousness away from this biological body into other things. And maybe that's what technology is doing. Maybe it's just turning everything into this stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why we're doing it. We're like that's part of evolution is just everything becomes technology because technology doesn't have to eat itself.
I just hope technology doesn't get it wrong. Like peanut butter's still a liquid.
But
is it though?
But what if you could just have the experience of peanut butter without eating peanut butter?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, or just you don't have to eat anything.
Yeah.
You can just I need some peanut butter. It appears. It's nanotechnology. You just eat it. You have the same experience, the same indulgence, the same enjoyment of the experience without any of the negative aspects of the experience.
That would be crazy.
I think Ray Kurzweil in his book he wrote back in the 90s or early 2000s, the singularity is near. I think is what it's called. He talks about how he thought that eventually everything would become technology, and I think it does. I think eventually technology transforms everything into technology because it's just nature. Yeah. It's just a higher form of complexity, and then that thing is no longer bound by these biological constraints, so it can start to spread out into the universe. And maybe there are many of these civilizations that are popping up, and as they become more advanced, they just expand, and eventually everything expands together until the whole universe is just this one organism. Mm. And then maybe it starts over. I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But either way, that's not going to happen next year.
When you just went quiet right there, that's where we need the bomb just to go.
Yeah, there's that too. We are doing some crazy stuff right now. With Russia and everything.
No, I think it's really weird. So you get to actor, so then you come down to some of the things that we're fighting over. You wonder,
is it important?
Yeah,
what's the point?
Important? Yep.
It seems maniacal.
Yeah. Well, and again, is it part of that distraction? I got to tell you while we're on it. So Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Yeah, because we're talking about the Actor Guild. We're talking about the whole thing, right? And they've had some, I don't know what the proper word is. We'll just call them little people. I don't know if that's what they go by, but they've had them on, and they're like, they don't like being typecast into a specific role, but they're like, this is literally Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, right? Like it's in the name.
Yeah, you're a good castability for that.
Yeah, so they're like, you're putting average people there, and and they're like, for me, that's being brought up. It's like, they need to recast the whole thing, then you do it over again, and then. I want to ask your opinion because, the girl that's playing Snow White, they're talking about, she's a strong female and she's not looking for love. She's not looking for a man. Like she wants to solve her own problems and conquer the world. And I guess on my side, why do we have to rewrite stories?
Yeah, I was just thinking about this yesterday.
Why can't we make new stories, right? Like Why do we have to fundamentally change history, right? Because today you don't like it. Like, I think that's a mistake. I feel like if you want to write something new, right? If you want to tell a story of a Snow White-esque character, right? Like a woman that's strong and powerful and this and that. Like, you want to tell that, then tell that, but don't call it Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, right? Like, I feel like you're getting a certain amount of viewers based on historically what Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs were, right? And so you're saying, okay, well, we're gonna make this whole new thing that has nothing to do with it historically, because we know we're gonna get a certain amount of viewership for that.
Yeah.
But it's a completely different storyline, a completely different thing. So why not just make a new story? You know, and I think, like, if you look at things like Brave, for instance, right? Like, you had a strong female lead that, you know, that was independent, that wasn't, like, I think you can take and create new stories that, if that's what you want. I'm not saying don't do that. I'm just saying if you want that, you can create that. You don't have to rewrite. You don't have to change fundamentally, like, the past.
So I think I've got two takes on this.
Okay.
Because there's definitely this corporate element of that thing where it's like it's just doing it to irritate people.
Yeah.
Like there's an intentional thing in there where it's doing that.
I hate to use the word woke, but there's also an element of,
yeah, because I feel like wokeness is some sort of authoritarian movement.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of good stuff within that movement that's not a part of that authoritarian aspect. And
right.
I think and so when I go to, like, if I take it down to, like, the foundation of whatever it is to the artistic creative level.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of artists are good people. I mean, there's some shitty artists too, but there's a lot of artists.
I just want to put this out there. Tom Cruise would have been a great dwarf.
Yeah.
Technically.
Sure.
I mean,
any good actor would be
guy,
a great.
But he's a short guy, though.
You know, and I think when
I need the ding ding.
When you're casting a film, I think the ability of the actor is number one.
True.
It should be. It shouldn't matter about anything else unless they can do a really good job with that role. When you talk about remakes and reboots of these classic movies like Snow White, I don't think you're going to see many movies like Snow White in the future because there's so many options. There's a million Snow Whites. You know, the quality of production and the quality.
Oh, I agree with that. So why redo Snow White? Why not just do a million new productions?
The reason to redo Snow White, my argument for redoing Snow White would be, it is maybe one of the last films of an era that had that level of notoriety in a zeitgeist that may no longer exist. And so, you know, you had during that, when was Snow White created? In the 50s? 30s. So go back. So go back to when that movie was created. You know, there was a lot of racism. There were a lot of people that were in really difficult circumstances, and if you could take something like that and reboot it, and maybe make a whole black cast or a Hispanic cast or an Asian cast or whatever, it could be all these simultaneously. In 3 years, you can make Snow White anything you want it to be, instantaneously.
Yeah.
And then your child can look at a black Snow White. If you have a black kid, they can watch Snow White as a black cast and they can relate to it better.
Yeah.
Because and then they can have that same special moment that.
This is the AI in force right here. We don't have to have an actor. We can just.
Well, AI will solve this for sure.
AI will solve it. Yeah. Like, I want a diverse cast. I want a LGBTQ cast. I want a whatever the plus.
I want to be all the characters.
Yeah. I want all the characters to be.
You're a narcissist, yeah.
I want them to be all to be in my image. You know. So
and it'll be possible. It'll be anything you want.
Yeah. Well, maybe if SAG doesn't have their way about it.
I don't think SAG is going to be able to beat this one, dude. But yeah. So I think that's my argument. So like I just watched the Little Mermaid.
Yeah,
and they used a black girl
with orange hair.
Yeah, she still had red hair.
Yeah,
I mean she's a mermaid. She's not a human.
Yeah,
but, you know, it's a completely ridiculous movie anyway, but it was a good movie.
But why'd she still have to have red hair?
I think it was like an homage to the original because it actually stayed pretty close to the original story. It was a great movie.
Yeah, but like an homage might have been just to have her be white.
Could have, but I think
if you change her skin color, why not change her hair?
I think the red hair was probably the biggest trait that she had. You know, as I think if you think of Little Mermaid, immediately you think that bright red hair. Like that's and also the color palette of the movie. There's a lot of reds and greens, you know. So it's I think when you're thinking about
I'm just saying
art like that, you're thinking about color palettes. So
when you like if you're let's say you have an African American child that has normal hair, by their standard, right? Like what they would consider normal hair. Well, then you just set them up to fail because like a very small percent of the population actually has red hair, right?
well, you and I both know race is a
Oh, no, I don't care.
Absurd, ambiguous thing that
I don't care. I'm just saying in general, like why not? Why does she still have red hair? That's what I'm getting at. Is like
I think it's because of the color palette. I think it's because I think the color palette of the art. If you're gonna reboot something,
the real question is, do they still have the penis in the in the castle?
I didn't see it. I should have looked. That's a good question. There may be one in there somewhere.
Yeah. And is it white or black? I mean, I'm just saying.
That's a pretty big one on that palace.
I'm just saying. We got to see if they're, if they took some creative liberties with the.
It may have been the biggest penis ever.
Yeah.
It was a spire on a castle.
Dude, I wish I still had it. I had a long time ago, like I think a VHS from a long time ago that had the castle.
There's some value to it. Yeah.
I wish I don't have them. Yeah, I got rid of all of them, but
I might actually have a copy of that.
Yeah, that'd be hilarious.
Yeah,
I need what do they call it? A phallus?
I bet Eric has a copy of it. He probably has one in here.
Dude, if it's got a phallus on it, we got to put that right here.
Yeah, sure.
We got to put it up. I want it right here.
Yeah.
Seth, I need you to superimpose the Little Mermaid. When I said it, I need the phallic castle right here, so that people.
I like. Well, I mean, yeah, it could be anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, right there. Yeah.
But I like reboots of older movie, like classic movies. Like, did you ever watch you saw the original Total Recall, right?
Oh yeah.
The second one was great. Like the remake of it.
Yeah, so I did start the 1977. Star Wars?
Oh, the
original one from 19. I guess it's the original one, even though it says number 4. I don't get the numbering.
Oh yeah. Number 4 was the first one that was because they didn't have the technology to make the first 3. Because that was like the Clone Wars and all that stuff, and it was just too much. It was too difficult to even when they finally did make it in like 2000 or whatever. It was still too early. They should have waited until now. To create those movies.
So I did start watching that, and I got to tell you, it's a lot. It's a lot. The robots talking, and
I love those movies.
Yeah, but I'm struggling to get through it, to be honest with you. Like there's parts of it. Like, all right.
You kind of had to have watched it back then, and have that nostalgia for it. Okay, they are great movies, but they were great movies.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think about it from that angle, because the movie's older than I am. Like from that angle, it was amazing.
But you can't have.
I'm a huge Avatar fan, right? Like so when the first Avatar came out,
that's a great example.
I was on the edge of my seat when the first one came out because it seemed so. They made it seem so realistic, but it was so futuristic, right?
Yeah.
So when the first one came out, I remember I watched it like 3 to 5 times in the theater, right? When the first one came out, and then I watched the second one, and the second one. What's crazy is I had the anticipation of the first one where I wanted that level of awe, right? Like that level of I couldn't believe it, but I believe it.
Yeah.
But you don't get it.
But it's not groundbreaking enough.
No, it's not.
It's not different enough.
Because it was just the same thing. It was just it was a continuation of that story. But when that first one came out, if you look at that time in America, like in that time in it just was. It
was beyond anything else.
Right. And so now when you watch it, actually it seems believable. It's like, well, we're going to put ourselves in an avatar, another body, and there's an alien world, and there's different creatures. I'm like, I can see that.
That was just like a philosophy class or something.
Yeah, it's like, okay, this works. You can study this at
But that
Stanford.
same thing you're talking about is the experience that people had back in, like I had in the 80s, early 80s as a child watching Star Wars: A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back and The Return of the Jedi, because these movies were so grand and amazing. The special effects were just unbelievable. It was,
and watching them now, it's kind of like,
like for me, if I watch them now, I still love them because it takes me back to that same awe and that same experience. But if you didn't experience it back then, it's not going to have the same effect today.
Yeah,
it's just going to be like a shitty science fiction movie.
Yeah, so
it's got a good storyline, but it's hard to watch it because it looks so fake.
So I was at Disney this last week with a couple of days. I was supposed to be in Disney the previous 2 weeks ago. I got we'll just say sick. I got really under the weather and couldn't go. So I went. I took the kids, and again, big fan of Avatar. So obviously, Magic Kingdom has an Avatar ride. It has 2 rides actually, but one that you get on a device that makes you feel like you're riding the creature. I can't remember the name of it at the moment, but anyway. I remember the first time I rode that ride years ago, how realistic it felt. And again, I got let down again, right? Because I'm there and I'm just like, man, the technology exists for this. Like, we could have put on an Oculus.
Yeah, VR headset.
A VR headset, right? Like, you could take for a lot less money that they spent on that Avatar ride, and you could create an Avatar experience now for a fraction of the cost. That would be so much more.
Oh, yeah.
What's the word?
I know what you mean. Yeah, so much more
immersive.
Yeah,
so much more, right? And so what I'm worried about, what I'm thinking about is what's exciting me is the technology is moving so fast.
Movies will be that. Soon.
Yeah,
not long
that's what's
from
coming,
yeah.
right?
I think Avatar. I think the new Avatar. They've already talked about having a VR version of that movie.
Yeah. So what happens with like these theme parks, right? I'm wondering if
you don't need them anymore.
Exactly, like that experience starts to change, and you can have that level of experience
in your house,
in your home.
Yeah. Yeah, because
if you had the proper setup.
Well, I mean, even the movie theaters.
What's that other movie that you told me about that I loved? That talks about that. And it's a VR AR dystopian future where they like plug in.
Oh, Ready Player One.
Ready Player One.
Yeah,
like that's a great example.
Oh yeah, that's a perfect example, and that's very likely what the near future is going to be like.
Yeah.
So I think movie theaters. I think the only way to salvage movie theaters is if they just play old movies. Yeah. If they cater to people our age and they play stuff from like the 60s through the 90s.
I don't know about you, but I've been in the movies, not a lot, but a few times, and it's not the same. It's not the same.
No, it's not the same because I can sit at home with my VR headset and be in a nice movie theater, and be comfortable in my house and have just the same viewing experience, in my own privacy. And you and I could be in that movie theater together. You can be in your house, I can be in my house. Our families could all have headsets on. We could all be in the same theater together. The experience.
The watch parties, man. Yeah.
And it feels like we're really there in that same place together.
Yeah.
Because we are just in a digital world and we're watching the same movie together and having the same experience without having to go anywhere. It just makes more sense.
Yeah.
What if your house sucks?
Well, it doesn't suck as bad inside there. Maybe if your house sucks, you'll be in there a lot.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. I went to the movie theaters like 2 weeks ago. It's still pretty awesome for
it's
me.
Still cool. Yeah, I still love it, but it's not what it used to be to me.
I'm not gonna lie to you. So
I used to go a lot.
Seth, I'll tell you. You know, I'm gonna put this out there, and this is a men's mental health statement here. I know most of our viewers are men anyway. So, but for any ladies watching this, I think men, like one of the best memories I have with Neil, I got a bunch of them, but Neil and I going and watching a movie, which didn't get to happen a lot, but the few times that we got to go watch a movie together, like I thoroughly enjoyed that. I do feel like men need a break. Like men need things to go do together, period. Whether it's go watch a movie, go work out, go hike. Neil and I have done quite a bit of hiking together. Like, this is a total distraction here, but I mean, like, you know, go to the movie, Seth. Like, having another guy to go do things with. Like, no homo, but bromance. Like, you know, like the dudes just going. It's just different, you know?
Sure.
And because there's a different expectation when you take a female to go do any of those things, right?
Or if they take us. They need
or
the
they
same
take
thing.
us. Yeah, exactly.
We need people.
Yeah, I want, you know, ladies should have their time. I think men need, like, things that they go do with other men.
Because we understand each other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm gonna segue there, but you know, so I'll go watch old movies with you at the theater. But I kind of feel like
we may have to buy the theater because I think they're all going to go out of business.
I think that's what's coming actually. You know, other than the big pump with the stock going through the roof because of that, I think that was short lived, and it breathed some light back into that industry. But I have very little. I'm super frustrated, as is almost everyone I speak with, that I have to wait for months sometimes for a movie that's already done, that's already complete, just because it has a release date in theaters. And then subsequent to that release date in theaters, where now they're trying to do this available only in theaters, right? Yeah. And then they have it where they're contracting with the theaters to give them a certain period of time before they release it electronically or digitally, rather.
Yep.
And that is so... Like that's the industry fighting technology, fighting the advancements, right? And that's me. I get so frustrated about that. Like I get it, I understand, but what really needs to happen is the movie industry, as far as we know it, the theaters just need to go out of business. They need to close up. It's going to happen, right? There's no way it stays the way it does.
No, because they've already started reducing their hours. They used to stay open until you could go watch a movie at 11:30 at night.
Yeah.
Like before COVID in 2019, you could go to the movies at
Man.
11:30 on a Sunday night and watch a movie. And that doesn't exist anymore. The last movies play at 9 o'clock now, like 9:30. So that's when I see stuff like that.
Have you been
I
to
see
a theater,
failing business.
And you've
seen it.
Yeah, absolutely. You see the theaters now. All of a sudden, now you got huge recliners, right? You get more comfort.
Oh, they're comfortable. Yeah,
We got the dine-in studio theater. They're trying, right?
trying to make you feel like you're home.
But now you went from having 400 seats in a theater to say 70 seats in a theater, and guess what? Half of them, like the last few times I've been, they've been half full at best.
Yeah, they're really empty. Yeah.
Half full at best. I mean,
now some of the kids' movies do better, but
yeah, but it's just one of those things. Like, it's just not the same. I don't know how I don't care if you're selling your popcorn for $8 a thing. I can count the number of staff. I can count the overhead. I don't know how they're making money.
There's another thing too. With technology, we've all become a lot more busy.
Yeah,
like as we're more efficient, we can.
I think we also, not only just that, I think we're more irritated.
Oh, we want something now.
Yeah, man. Like that instant gratification thing can be a problem. I struggle with that.
It's a problem.
I struggle with that
because it gets a little manic.
Yeah.
Like I have to put my phone down sometimes or just turn things off. Just turn everything off and just.
I got to be really careful because some shit that I dive into, like if they had back then with Avatar, if they had like 10 seasons of Avatar back then when the first one came out.
Oh, you'd be addicted to it. Yeah.
Yeah. I would have spent the first that next year not being productive.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the whole point.
Well, yeah,
maybe we're just going to consume. Maybe the technology would advance to a point where most people just
to death.
Yeah, they're just we're going to stick our head. We're the ostrich. We stick our head in the ground, and the world is just passing by. We're stuck in.
It's what the World Economic Forum talks about. Those elitists out there are talking about like you'll have nothing and be happy.
Yeah,
because they want. What's going to happen is this technology as it advances, these corporations are going to keep producing more shit, and they've got to have people use it, so they'll start giving it to us.
Yeah.
And you'll just start getting paid to watch their content. Like they'll start paying us to watch their movies.
Yeah.
But
that's
now,
that's a good point.
After COVID, I'm like, I spend way too much time watching movies, dude.
Yeah.
I stopped watching movies because I don't have. I'm 43 years old. I can see the finish line now.
I can't see
like,
it.
hey, I got to do.
I don't subscribe to that. I don't subscribe to that.
So I can't. I still watch movies occasionally, and like every Sunday night, like our family will watch a movie together.
I do. Now I will say this: I do
fun.
still enjoy, and my children. The house we were staying at Disney had a theater, and that was enjoyable, right? Like, but again, it brings me back to it was set up as a theater, legit, like the right way, the right surround sound, a massive TV. I don't remember, it was 96-inch or something, huge TV, maybe a dozen chairs, right? Theater grade, better, the full recliner, everything, and you felt. When you got lost in it for a little bit, you felt like you were in the movies.
Now, I do have a theater in my house, too.
Yeah, there you go. See, same thing.
So,
right?
and I use it way more than I ever used it.
Yeah, so think about that. You're like, you can recreate that experience for a fraction of the cost. Like, so that's what I'm saying. Like, I really feel like I did still enjoy that with my kids.
Yeah, that's good. Now, like, I'd go watch a movie with you.
Yeah, I would. Yeah,
or like I go watch movies with Isla or Isla and Danielle. Danielle doesn't really care about
some level, that would also be us doing something nostalgic, right?
Yeah, it's an experience. I'm experiencing. So that's different. That's to me. There's value in that.
Yeah, and I don't even need the high level stuff because I enjoy going and hiking with you, right? Like a simple.
That's great.
A simple thing, right?
Yeah.
So I still think there's some place. I just don't think it functions in the future in the way that it has in the past.
It's just changed.
It has.
And everybody is like shocked by it, but it's like, how old is this industry anyway? It's like 100 years old. Who cares?
Exactly, man.
It's going to change. It should have already changed.
Yeah. People are fighting it.
Yeah.
And what's probably going on, we'd have to really dive into this, but what's probably going on is that these studios, these physical theaters have contracts. They have people that own them that are still very powerful, very influential, and they have relationships, and they're fighting the change, and they're probably pressing, right? They want the theater release. They want these things. And so they're keeping the technology from just going straight to people being able to stream it from their Oculus or from their home device or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that will continue to erode. Part of the problem was, we talked about the SAG in this. Part of the issue is that when COVID hit and people started streaming at home, there was a big issue because a lot of these actors got paid. A big part of their contracts was based off the money in theaters.
Yeah.
And then it went straight to streaming at home, and they didn't have that. So that technology.
Well, that's part of the SAG thing too. Is they're trying to get more money, more residuals for actors. That is a problem because the residuals in acting used to be really good, and now they're garbage. Like now they just don't really exist hardly. And these companies still make a fortune off that content.
This is the problem with dilution, though. Too. This is the problem with making it available to the masses, right? Like I'm not saying
no, you're right.
There's not room for
compensation.
I'm just saying in general, the technology is moving faster than the laws or the legislation or the contracts can, right? So I think the days of writing a contract in certain industries and it being good for 50 years are gone because it's just changing too quickly. We don't even know what it's going to be in 5 years.
A lot of actors now are also signing over their
digital likeness and all that.
Digital likeness because like even that Indiana Jones movie that just came out, a lot of that was AI.
Yeah, I was told, and I don't know if this is true or not, but LeBron James signed part of his $1 billion deal was it also included his image, his likeness, his everything.
Probably, yeah, sure.
Yep. So I mean, who knows?
I'd sell my likeness for $1 billion.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, the you don't need $1 billion. I mean, like if you just understand the value of money and what it does, you know.
But I don't think. I don't think these studios are going to be relevant in the future. I think they'll create some cool stuff. I
got to tell you, like the shithead inside of me, like the guy that kind of can be a shithead, would be like, I'm going to buy the likeness. So are people going to start selling their likeness, right?
Yeah.
So you think about like OnlyFans, you think about all this other stuff that people are selling. Would someone be willing, like you just said, would they be willing to sell their likeness, and for what cost?
Right.
Right. So imagine now some 20-year-old or 30-year-old or whatever is going to sell their likeness to be used for whatever, right? And then you get somebody that say buys it, and then maybe you don't like that person, and so now you make all this content with this image that you own, right? Just doing these crazy things. Like
it's Pootie Tang.
You said what? Pootie Tang?
That's literally the plot to Pootie Tang.
Oh well,
there you go. But like you could really start to think about it. You don't like Trump.
Well, the scary part.
What if you own Trump's likeness? Like, what if Trump had sold it 50 years ago?
You could ruin somebody's.
Yeah, you could. So, like, if you own the rights to people, maybe these corporations are going to start owning the rights to individuals, right?
But I think one thing that's scary about that is, I think I'm going to start taking all the pictures of my daughter down off social media, because it's not about even selling people's likenesses. They'll just be able to just copy them.
Yeah,
and you'll see people in commercials and stuff, and there's countries like China that don't really have copyright rules. They don't obey them.
Yeah, just pull the data from
and
America.
They just use whatever they want to use.
Yeah,
So and I think copyrights are going away too. I don't think it's possible to have copyrights in the future because
Adam with Reveal.
NFTs are a good way to copyright.
Yeah,
things.
Adam with the Reveal, and I'm doing a terrible job here, but anybody that wants to check him out, let me just pull it up real quick. And apologies, Adam. I don't know this better to to properly plug, but I do think that that Adam is it BitDragon?
Yep.
Let's find it real quick while I'm here. Adam with Reveal, and as on Instagram it's BitDragon Live, BitDragonLive. But Adam with BitDragon Live, like this is one of the things that he's working on is essentially, I don't want to call it copyright, but let's just call it the digital version of Norton Antivirus, and be able to protect, I think, and encrypt people's likenesses, their digital lives. So I think that's something, if you really want to look into, to Reveal and that technology, is pretty awesome. And disclaimer, Neil and I both had invested in that company a couple years ago, so. We could, in theory, benefit from you guys checking it out, but not financial advice. Just a pretty cool thing. I think he's ahead of his time, and something that he's been working on and actively participating in for years. I do think that he is doing great things to work on that technology to help encrypt. You were talking about that to help protect that. So we'll see. Who knows? But
the only thing that I think may fall through on that idea is that I think everybody's individual AI will be able to do the same thing just for you on everything you create.
We need to ask him that.
It's just a watermark, basically. Like Ahmad Mustaq was talking about this same thing with Peter Diamandis, And so Stability AI already watermarks everything they create. Everything their AI platforms create is watermarked, and that way you can tell it's AI because this stuff is indiscernible from reality. So you have to be able to have some way to tell if something is AI or AI generated, or if it's actual, like a photo or an image of somebody or something, or if it's an actual video of a real human, or if it's just an AI generated thing. And I think you'll have to have an AI to help you sift through this stuff too. And I think with the copyrights and stuff like that, there's going to be so much content that it's going to be impossible to copyright stuff. And I think maybe there may be some sharing that happens, like if like the percentage of your art that appears in somebody else's art, you just share in those in whatever revenue you get from that, if there is even revenue from that.
Right.
You know.
It's going to be interesting, to say the least.
It's fascinating, yeah. So I don't know. Humanity has never experienced anything this disruptive before.
Well, I mean, the day I was born.
That is good. We'll wrap it up there.
It was fun, man.
Yeah.
It's been too long.
Good. Yeah, good conversation. Enjoyed
Definitely.
it. Yeah.
Seth, we appreciate you, buddy.
Yeah, for sure, man. Which camera? This one? Hope you guys enjoyed the episode. If you did, be sure to like and subscribe. We'll see you next week.
Later, guys.
Bye, guys.